Let's take a quick look at those standard ACL rules one more time, and then we'll work a little bit on the live equipment as well. And remember, standard ACLs, they're only going to look at the source IP address for our matches. ACLs, all of them run top to bottom. First match is the end of that process. The implicit deny at the end of every ACL, if packets are not expressly permitted, they are implicitly denied. And I have something down here that isn't review. Let me bring that up a bit. They are applied with the IP access group command, and the direction of the packets to which the ACL is to be applied must be defined. Let me ask you one thing about that implicit deny, though. I have seen some admins write explicit denies at the end. Now, some people just do it because they just want to see it, and that's fine. But what other reason could you have for writing an explicit deny any statement at the end of an ACL? Remember that one from your NA studies? If you wanted to log anything that matched that statement. And let's go ahead and call up the live equipment here. We'll take a quick look around at what we can and can't do with our ACLs. We know our ranges, so we'll go ahead and put one there and use iOS help. Deny, permit, remark. We're coming to remark in a few minutes, but let's just go ahead and do a deny right here. And then we're going to be asked, address to match. Then we're given the option of any for any source host and host for a single host address. I'm going to have those on the whiteboard for you in a few minutes as well, but that's just exactly what they mean. If you're working with any, just put any. If there's a host, let's say there's a single host at 145.111 you want to deny packets from, source IP address. So we could put the word host here and then follow that with the host name, or more likely the host address. And then that's it. Remember, you can use the log option at the very end of the command to log the matches against this entry. You just hit create, and that's it. So then, what is the net effect of this particular access list? What is the net effect of it? We are denying everything, right? And this is really easy to do when I guess it's just the way human logic works, because you look at this list, or if it's one statement or 10 and they're all denies, it's like, well, it's denying all that traffic that's named there. It's denying everything, because your explicit deny is denying traffic source from 145.111. Your implicit deny is denying everything else. If we wanted to go ahead and put that on an interface, you'll notice there is no access list or access group up here. There's access expression, which is build a bridge Boolean access expression, which you may go a long time and never do. And let's see, you probably know what a Boolean is, but writing one there you probably won't do. What you've got to do is put the IP command here first, and then you can type your access group, specify access control for packets. Group. Then you just either put your number, IP access list standard or extended, IP expanded access list standard or extended, or the name itself. So if we had written 1, your command is not complete yet, because notice there's no CR under there. So you've got to either put inbound or outbound packets, and then that's it. So it's the IP access group command that we're going to use to apply our ACL to an interface. Let's talk about that remark. 2 undisputable facts. You will not be the only network admin that ever works on your network. I know that some of us think that way, or we're going to be in this job forever, we're never going to leave anywhere, etc. That probably isn't true, and even if it is, you're unlikely to be the only admin who ever works on the network as long as it ever exists. And if I sound a little aggravated already, it just brings back memories, because ACLs, as you already know, they can be pretty intricate. And sure, I can look at an ACL that's blocking port 80 or port 23, and you could do the same and say, okay, I know what you're doing with that. That's not that big a deal. But when you start naming a lot of internal address ranges, and they're not allowed to go out this way, and you're calling a couple of No, I don't want to say obsolete port numbers. They're still out there, but not so well-known port numbers, ones that we don't use on a regular basis, like character generator port, that kind of thing. I had to block that for once, and I had to look it up. Man, I didn't remember what port number it was. Remark it. Just say, I'm writing this ACL because if I don't, this application will not run. You know, obviously wouldn't put that many words, but let's go ahead and say something like that. And then you just put remark there, and then you just put your comment up to 100 characters. So obviously what I said would have been truncated, but needed by vendor X. Vendor X, I like that. And that's just it. It's not as good as Moonshiner X. We were watching Moonshining, the TV show on the Discovery Channel. And they named some anonymous moonshiner Moonshiner X. I said, if I ever become a pro wrestler, that's going to be my name. So anyway, there's your IP access list right there again. But put that remark in there because it really does help. The first thing I look for if I'm looking at some 37-line ACL is, you know, what the heck did this person write this for? Because you don't want to find out by taking it off. That's a bad way to figure it out. Hopefully they have remarked it for you. Now let's get back to that host and any. And remember when you first started studying the stuff and you would just occasionally look at a wildcard mask or something like that, and you look at it and you just say, well, that can't be the right answer because it looks funny. I used to do that, so I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. You know, I'd be in there taking my CCNA exam or, you know, a Novell exam, entry level. I hate to say entry level. They're harder than entry level, but that's their term. And you sit there and you look at a mask. And it's like, well, you know, all zeros, you know, can that be right? Well, yes, it can be. There's nothing wrong with a wildcard mask of all zeros or all ones in binary, which would be 255 for each octet in dotted decimal. They might look funny, but they work. And of course, you get over that because later when you're working with them, you don't give it a second thought. You can, though, use the words host and any to replace those masks, but you got to know which word replaces which mask. You don't have to, but it would do wonders for your exam score. Because I know admins that don't use these, and on the other hand, I, for one, use them all the time when I'm writing an ACL. The mask of all zeros can be replaced with the word host. And that is simply that masking of all zeros. It's going to match one address and one address only. Now, instead of typing 255 4 times, with that which that mask matches all addresses, that can be replaced with the word any. And what you have to get used to with the extended ACLs is that these words can be used twice or in combination in an extended ACL, once for the source IP and another time for the destination IP. And we'll take a look at extended ACLs on the live equipment here shortly, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. But as my sainted papa used to say, it ain't what you meant, it's what you said. And of course, when we're talking to a computer, whether we're actually talking to it or inputting through the keyboard, it still just does what we tell it to do. And that's where the order of your lines comes in with your access lists. Because the first set you've got here is going to deny traffic from a given network, and then it's going to permit everything else. The second set of commands, if that were a separate ACL, that would permit everything with the first line, and the second line would never be read. There's no reason to, right? Because the first line is going to match everything. I know after a while, it's just like, come on, you're really hammering away at that. But I've seen this happen. It does happen. Just watch the order of your lines. And again, when you're writing those 20, 25, 30 line ACLs and they're not doing what you think they ought to do, go somewhere quiet with a copy of your ACL and just go down through it line by line. You'll be amazed at how quickly you pick up what the problem is. Now, the extended ACLs. We do have some options available here that standard ACLs don't offer. But these particular ACLs require a source and destination IP address to be defined, even if one or both of them is any. You can't just leave it blank. And let's just go ahead and bring that up. Let's try conft instead. That'll probably work much better. Access list, and let's go with 100 here. And we've got deny, permit, remark, and we've got a different term in there, dynamic. Not going to work with that just yet with the dynamic ACL. But we will go ahead and make this a permit statement. And notice now that we have a whole lot of options that we didn't have with the standard ACL. Because we could put in a IP protocol number. I think that's going to be pretty rare. But look, plenty of these things aren't rare. You know, here's EIGRP going from top to bottom. IGMP, IP, of course, is the one we're going to use here in a moment, OSPF, and TCP and UDP at the bottom. So there are a lot more options here with this particular ACL type. And this part looks very familiar. You could put a source address, you could put any or host. And let's say that we were going to make it a certain host. And it's going to be 172.111. And now I've got to define a destination. Note that there is no CR here. So I can't just say, okay, I got to write an extended ACL, but I'm just going to define the source. No. You can say any destination host, but you got to say something. So let's just go ahead and put any there. And a couple things, just one thing here. You've got your log entries. You know, you've log and log input, which we didn't see earlier with the standard log matches against this entry, including input interface. Time range we're going to come back to. We're going to see that before the end of this section. But I will definitely show you that. But now we're seeing the CR. So that is a legal command. And that looks, you know, speaking of things that just look funny, you know, that line just looks funny, doesn't it? Access list 100 permit IP host 172.111 any. Just remember, the first part of it's referring to the source. Second part of it, destination IP address. You can also work in, let's go back here. We had host. Let's do another line. We'll start another ACL. Do 110 here. And we'll permit. Let's use TCP here. Whoops. Permit TCP 172.111. And there are your wildcard bits. So see, again, there's a great reminder because I didn't put any or host. If I put host, I don't have to type the bits out. But here I could just type that one. It's going to match. And here's an interesting option. I don't think your NA security is going to get into this much detail, but it's a good one to know. When you use TCP or UDP here, you don't have to just match on one port number. You can match packets on a given port number with a greater port number, GT for greater than, less than or lower port number. Match only packets not on a given port number, so you also have a not equal than, and then you've got a range. So if I put equal here, what happens then? Here's that list of port numbers, and it's not every single well-known port number, but it's an awful lot of them. And now you can define what your port number is going to be. And again, your NA security is not going to go into this kind of detail where they say greater than or less than, not equal to, or range. I just wanted to show that to you. But here's a good list of ports. So if you wanted to permit this particular source IP address, then equal and just say the character generator port, we'll go with 19. Now we've still got to type the destination. We've still got to enter that. So I'm going to go ahead and put one of those in. I'm going to put a host in, and there's a reason for this. And let's say the host address is 210.111. Destination IP address. And I'll put an extra dot there. And then you've got this whole longer list. And now this is what I wanted to show you, because you'll see the screen went off. Whenever you see this $sign here, I see posts on this occasionally. I get this question every once in a while. What does it mean when I suddenly see a $sign at the beginning of my prompt? All that means is that your ACL, whatever you've entered, it doesn't have to be an ACL. Whatever you've entered here is so long that it can't fit on one line on the screen. The iOS is keeping up with it, but it's just letting you know, hey, there's some of this command that you're not seeing. That's what I wanted to show you. But you can see when I was referring earlier, it's like, you know, these things do get more complicated. I mean, look at some of the values in here. And again, we're beyond the scope, but I like to show you beyond the scope sometimes. You've got, here's match on the fin bit. And we still have all the range match on the push bit, match on the reset bit, match on the send bit, match on the urgent bit. I mean, there are a lot of values that you can match on once you go TCP UDP right there. So just a little extra there, just wanted to show you. But again, keep in mind that when you're looking at port numbers in ACLs, you can use iOS help right here, and it's going to show you a list. And there are some pretty well-known ones here, ones we use pretty often. File transfer protocol, of course. World Wide Web, we use that just every once in a while, but also ports such as echo and discard and character generator that we don't use it as often. It's going to list those. So you can either list the name of it here in the left-hand side, or you can just enter the port number. That's all there is to it. So a lot there about ACLs. Like I said, you can get very, very detailed with these babies. We talked a bit about applying the ACLs. You can apply to a given interface, one for incoming, one for outgoing. And show IP interface is an excellent command for verifying your AC application. We don't use that one that often because I tend to just use show interface E0 or show interface S0. But if you run show IP interface and then the name of the interface after that, that's a fantastic verification tool. We will actually use that one in the next video when we get to named ACLs. So if you're not familiar with these, this will be some great work for you. And if you are familiar with it, it's going to be great work for you as well. I'll see you there.